Hello and welcome to Manga Tour 96, and today we have the review of One Piece manga chapter 1030, titled The Impermanence of All Things. With this chapter, Oda did actually manage to reach an all-time low with his fake-out deaths. As we all know, fake-out deaths are one of, if not the worst part of this series, where we've seen some ridiculous stuff that characters managed to survive over the course of the manga. But the fake-out death in this chapter takes the first place in being the worst one out of all of them. I'm not mad that Kinemon is alive, as nobody believed that he was dead in the first place. The thing that makes me mad is the explanation on how he survived, which if I didn't read the cover page at the beginning of the chapter where there is the One Piece logo, I would have thought that I was reading a fairy tale chapter and not a One Piece one. But I wasn't wrong, I was reading the right manga. The problem is that Oda managed to reach fairy tale levels of bullshit with this fake out death explanation. I'm not cheating here on fairy tale, as saying that Urza wins every fight she is in despite the odds because she is Urza makes more sense and is a better explanation for all the nonsense that Urza pulled throughout fairy tale than this shit of an explanation that Oda gave us in this chapter. If we couple this with learning that Kanjuro and Kiku are still alive makes this even worse. And I haven't even mentioned the awakenings that Kid and Law now have. I'm fine with them having awakening, but Oda could have at least given us some hints that they possessed it in the first place. I ranted enough in this opening, so I'll save that rant for later and start at the beginning of the chapter where things looked good. On the cover this week we have Brook, who is reunited with his arch-nemesis, the soldier ants from the movie Strong World, and just like in the movie, the ants ignore Brook just because he's a pile of bones. Going into the chapter, we have an intriguing meeting somewhere on Onigashima between Apu, Drake, and the first three numbers. Apu makes an interesting offer to Drake by offering him to join forces, and when this battle ends is the time they would make their move and take what they want. In their conversation, Apu mentions that he is aware that Drake is a marine spy, but that he doesn't care about it in this situation. We also see the first three numbers who in the opening double page spread do look intimidating. Hopefully they will be more of a threat than the other numbers that we have seen, which honestly isn't that difficult considering how easily the others were defeated. It's also interesting that only number 6 is left as the number that we haven't seen yet, and I wonder why Oda hasn't shown us number 6 yet. Maybe 6 will play an important role in the climax of this war, or Oda is just trolling us with number 6, and when he eventually introduces 6, it will be defeated in the same chapter. We do not learn of Drake's response in this chapter, but the possibility of him, Apu, in the three first numbers wreaking havoc when the fighting ends does make me wonder on what Oda's intentions actually are for the finale of Wano. From good content, it's time to go to awful content, to put it mildly, as after the talk about a potential alliance between Apu and Drake, we switch to Nami's and Usopp's group who are going down from the second floor to the first floor. This is all well and good, no problems here. Where the problems start when the group runs into a familiar pair of legs, albeit they are more bloodied than they were back in Punk Hazard. Those legs are of course Kinemon'S, but the question here is, how in the hell did this happen again? Before answering this question, Usopp catches Kinemon'S legs and as Kinemon somehow can talk through his farts, which was established back in Punk Hazard, communication is possible. Where the legs obviously don't have ears, so it's not easy to communicate. Thankfully for Nami, who is smart as she draws the rebellion sign on Kinemon's butt to tell him that they are allies so that he can tell them what is going on. Here starts where Kinemon begins with his shit explanation, which is actually quite fitting as he is talking with his farts. Usopp takes Hamlet, the Graf Gifter and Kinemon's legs and goes to the attic where his upper body is. We also learn that Kiku is still not dead and is hanging on for her life. Kiku being alive isn't surprising in the least, but that doesn't make it any less bad if she doesn't die for real. Kiku being alive is like an appetizer full of bullshit before the main dish full of bullshit, which is Kinemon's explanation on how he found himself in this situation in the first place. So Kinemon's theory as to why he survived Kaido stabbing him and why his legs separated from his upper body is because after his body was cut up by Law's ability back in Punk Hazard and after he managed to piece himself together, apparently his legs and upper body didn't join back together as they should have. So when Kaido pierced him, he accidentally hit the right spot where his upper body and lower body weren't connected properly, thereby just passing through it and cutting it apart like Law would in his room. Okay, where to begin on what's wrong with this explanation? First of all, let's begin with his body not joining together like it should have. Weeks, I would even say a couple of months have passed since Punk Hazard, and you want me to believe that since then Kinemon's body wasn't attached like it should have and he didn't notice anything wrong. I can't believe that something like that could be possible. If his body was really wrongly attached, he would have noticed it at some point, and it surely would have affected him while he was fighting throughout Punk Hazard when he got his body back. Throughout the whole of Dressrosa and throughout this whole raid, nothing was wrong until Kaido pierced him with a sword and then inconveniently happened. Well, I could swallow not reattaching his body correctly as a plausible explanation, but him not noticing this for so long is just bullshit and nothing else. Also, even if it's true that his body isn't attached how it should be, how can Kaido piercing him with a normal katana separate his body in the first place? I could understand if Kaido sliced him apart or used a sword with a broader blade to pierce him, but he didn't, so I can't see how can being pierced by a normal katana led to this body separation even if it wasn't reattached properly. What infuriates me most about this whole situation isn't that Kinemon is alive or even this bullshit explanation, it's the fact that Oda didn't need to go this bullshit road in the first place, as nobody believed that Kinemon died in the first place. He could have just let Kinemon survive like he let Kanjuro survive the first and second time, and it would have been fine. Also, with calling for help, there are those mini Wano Denden Mushis, so couldn't Kinemon had one in his pocket or something and called for help that way? It would have accomplished the same thing than the road that Oda chose to go down, but at the very least we would have been spared this bullshit of an explanation. Sadly, the bullshit doesn't end here, as there is still some room for a dessert full of bullshit, which makes this full course meal of bullshit complete. As we also learn that Kanjuro, who is on his dying breath for the last 40 chapters, is still alive, as he is the one who is talking with Orochi by using the Wano Denden Mushi. Why couldn't Kinemon use the same thing and we would have been saved from this shit that we got? Anyway, it's really getting annoying with Kanjuro and his I will die any minute now, but I will wait just a little bit to cause more problems. I mean seriously, I think that the fandom needs to retire the Wheel of P and start with the Wheel of K, as this arc clearly showed that Kaido, Kanjuro, Kinemon and Kiku are just unkillable monsters. And in Whole Cake it was clearly shown that the Wheel of P isn't almighty, as Pedro died, so it's clear which wheel is stronger between those two. Anyway, the point is that Kanjuro still not being dead, despite him saying that he will die in almost every chapter he has been in since Kiku first caught him, is becoming ridiculous, and it's really not funny anymore. The call between Kanjuro and Orochi is more of the Kurozumi revenge bullshit, where the end result is that Kanjuro, using his Delphoid power, creates a fire demon which has the purpose to reach the basement of Onigashima where all the explosives are and to make it go kaboom. There is an uncontrollable fire already spreading on Onigashima, and with the fight between Big Mom, Kid and Law shifting closely to said basement, I really don't see the point of Kanjuro's drawing. The only thing that I see from this is a pointless drawing that won't accomplish anything other than it informed us that Kanjuro was still not dead, and that is really not a good thing. With this, we can finally move from this shit show with the Scabbards and Kanjuro on will they die or won't they die. We shift to see a brief panel of Momo creating a bunch of mini flame clouds with a brief look into the flower capital before we reach the best page in the chapter in my opinion, where we see that some minks are helping Brook and Robin fend off some beast pirates' fodder. Meanwhile, we see how the members of the CP0 left the indestructible room and are on their way to capture Robin. We also see some shots of Marco, Izo and Kawamatsu, before seeing brief panels of the Sanji and Queen fight and Zoro and King fight. From the panel that we see of their fight, it does seem that those two have come to an agreement as King is fighting Zoro with a sword. While the fights of his wings are on the right and left side of the page, in the middle we have two brief panels of Luffy and Kaido fighting. Then we move to Yamato, who is on her way to the basement. She comes across the fight between Big Mom, Kid and Law, as after Big Mom used her Ikoku technique to send Kid flying, she jumps on Prometheus in hot pursuit in order to finish the job. Where we then get a brief flashback of a talk that Kid and Law had just moments prior, and in it we learn that both of them have awakened their fruits. At first, hearing that both of them have their fruits awakened does feel like an asshole, and if they did have awakening, why didn't they display it back on the roof? I do think that Oda could have given them a line that they had an ace up their sleeve so that this reveal wouldn't feel so out of left field. If nothing else, he did give us a proper explanation as to why they didn't use it on the roof, as it consumes too much energy to use it in the first place, so it's their last resort. No, I do like that both Kid and Law have awakening so that they are ahead of Luffy in something, and that they could be considered his rivals with this. If they didn't have awakening, then after this arc, those two would be so far behind Luffy that they couldn't be considered his equals anymore. We do not know much of Kid's journey, so him having awakening is acceptable, but I do have some question on Law, on how and when he got it in the first place. Either way, we see their awakenings in action, starting with Law, who can create a miniature room in his palm, which he calls Chrome. He infuses it with his sword and manages to pierce Big Mom's throat with it, but this is not where this attack ends, as Law can cause shockwaves inside Big Mom's body, which he does. This way he is the first character that has managed to cause actual damage to Big Mom. Well done, Law. After Law, it's Kid's turn, whose awakening allows him to turn Big Mom into a giant magnet, with her pulling all the weapons of the surrounding beast pirates as well as the metals in the building, which crushes her. With Big Mom getting crushed by tons of metal, we end this chapter. After last week's chapter, I said that the possibility of Big Mom being defeated by both Kid and Law has emerged, and after this week's chapter and the awakening of their abilities, the probability of it has increased. However, I do still ultimately believe that Big Mom will not be defeated in this arc. All in all, this chapter had some crazy moments, from the awakening of Kid's and Law's fruits to the possible alliance between Apu and Drake. However, it also had some of the most bullshit moments in the whole series, with explanation on Kinemon's fake out death and Kanjuro and Kiku still being alive, makes this chapter a pretty underwhelming one in my eyes. And that will be all for this video. If you like this video, leave a like, leave your thoughts in the comments below, or subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content as well as other manga content, and until next time, take care.